So is everybody here? Looks like.
Yes.
Got one more minute and we'll start.
Okay.
All right, we all set? Good to go?
Yep. Yes.
All right, good evening and welcome to the September 15th, 2020 special meeting of the Michigan City Area Schools Board of Trustees. At this time, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands one nation under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty
and
and justice for all. All right, mission statement, Mr. Domkowski.
The mission of the Michigan City Area Schools, the unifying force of our diverse community, is to ensure that each student will be able to achieve any goal to which he or she aspires and contribute positively to society through a system characterized by learning as a continuous experience of excitement, opportunity, and achievement, clear goals and high expectations for students' success, supportive families and community, staff with pride and purpose leading by positive example, and a student prepared for and enthusiastic about his or her future.
Thank you, Mr. Domkowski. Sarah, all members are present at this time. Now to our first order of business, the reopening update. Dr. Watkins or Dr. McCullum?
Thank you, Mr. Corley, and good evening, board members. Just pulling up our presentation for this evening. All right, once again, thank you, everyone. And tonight, we want to just provide the board with an update as new information has come out from the DOE and also the Indiana State Department of Health since our last meeting and last update at the end of August. And I just wanted to go over with you some of the information that we currently have in our reopening update, and not only in addition to the update from the Indiana State Department of Health, but also a recent survey that we provided to our parents and how that information panned out. So just starting once again from the matrix that we created in our original reopening update back in June that was approved by the board, which included our actions as a district for low spread, minimal spread, and then also if there was significant spread or substantial spread, what our district would do and how we would operate. In terms of definitions and how we determined what level of a spread we were at, back in July, we received information during the Indiana Urban Superintendents Association webinar that was hosted by Dr. Box on what the different levels meant at that time, according to the state. And at that time, our county was experiencing moderate spread with 5% or more of our residents testing positive. And once again, as you can see, the definitions that we used to determine where we were at as a district. And we made the recommendation and it was approved by the board at our July special meeting to start the school year off under a moderate spread And in that situation, we decided as a district to open up virtually, except for our students at the Career Center and a number of students at the high school who still needed in-person hours per state guidance. On August 26th, the governor and Dr. Box introduced a new metric system. And with that new system, also provided us with color-coded notations to help, once again, guide us in terms of where we are as a county, and also help school officials in determining the best way to provide instruction for our students. And as you can see in the notes there, each metric was assigned based on a score of 0 to 3. And then also in terms of the percent of students, or the percent of people who were tested in terms of 0 to 100. Those helped guide the state or guide us in terms of what our score was. Also, as you can see here in this slide, and this is a sample of what a blue, yellow, orange, and red means or looks like. And once again, this is a sample. So the blue meant that your score was a 0 to 1 or 0 to 0.9, and so on, as you can see as the guidance there on that slide. So in terms of what the blue means, each color category, as it says there, comes with recommendations for us as a district and for other districts in our county, guiding us in the best possible way to instruct our students. So in terms of the state's guidance, schools that are in a blue operate all schools in person, but limit activities where social distancing is not possible. Extracurricular activities could move along following state and local guidance, and then continue with our outreach to the public concerning best practices with hand hygiene, mask wearing, etc. And as you continue on, some of the recommendations based on the spread. So if there's a score of 1 or higher, as you can see there, that community would be considered in the moderate spread. Schools can continue in person, but increase vigilance in terms of social distancing, hygiene, mask wearing. No assemblies or activities if social distancing is not possible, and consider postponing extracurricular activities or other large gatherings. In terms of an orange spread, you can see there, no assemblies or large group activities, more discussion with the community and parents about limiting social events outside of school, and a very strong recommendation to limit or cancel extracurricular activities, or just limit those opportunities for extracurricular events to parents of the students that are participating. And then in terms of red, the highest amount of spread, schools, in terms of the state's recommendation, could remain open in terms of grade or elementary school, consideration of a hybrid, but no school assemblies, no extracurricular events, try to discourage any social events as much as possible. So looking at the current metrics, which are updated every Wednesday, you can see that in terms of where our county is right now, it would be a 0.5. And once again, this average is based on the weekly cases per 100,000 residents, and then also the 7-day positivity rate. So putting those two metrics together, while we are a 1 in terms of weekly cases per 100,000 residents, we are 0 in terms of the percent of people who have tested positive in our county. And that's why our county is a 0.5 or in the blue. So just more highlights, as you can see there, as I just mentioned, as of the last update of this metric, 57 people in our county have tested positive, which relates to a 3.44 test positivity rate. So just more information here in terms of the total positive cases, new cases, deaths. All of this information is provided by our county health department. And there's more information also on the Indiana State Department of Health's website. As we've been looking and monitoring our cases, going back to our last board meeting, our test positivity rate for the county has not been above 5% since August 25th. So there has been a definite trend of our test positivity rates, including our neighboring counties, in those rates trending downward. And then the metric that we were using in the past, just the positivity rate on its own, as I mentioned before, since August 5th, that rate has been below 5%. And there you can see the other counties in our region in terms of where those rates were. Starting off when we first met back in June, you had 10% and 9% in the local counties. And as you can see, those numbers have continued to trend downward. So any questions regarding the updated metric that was created on August 26th?
I just have one question. Which county are we looking at this current map? I mean, where are we at?
If you look at the top of the map where it says 3.7.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. All right. Any other questions regarding the new metric? All right, so as I mentioned, we did also survey our parents with the same instrument that we used back in June to help inform our reopening plan and determine what would be the best instructional options for our students. And in that first survey, we had 1,865 parents take part in the survey. And the most recent one, which we opened up last week, we had 1,932 parents participate in the survey. So some of the same highlights and questions, once again, that we asked before, starting off with if you had the option to choose back in July, which option or version of instruction would you like your student to have, in person or virtual? And back in July, 46% of our parents chose the option of virtual and only 53% for in-person. And as you can see in our most recent poll or survey, that number has changed. And now we're close to 68% of our parents wanting an in-person option for their student. I will also point out that as we started our enrollment and registration last in July, after we did the presentation, that we had close to 41% of our parents who were actually signing up and enrolling and registering their students in the online options. So very close or mirroring what the survey had pointed out. In actuality, it was bearing out that our parents were in a large percentage choosing virtual for their students. In terms of parents wanting their students to participate in any extracurricular activity, and we know that the extracurricular includes many options, just not the athletic options. And as you can see, there's an uptick or a change in the percentage of parents who are wanting that option for their student. And then in terms of percent of parents who want their students to take part in transportation, since we do provide transportation, you can see that there is increase in the parents who would choose to transport their own students. They would not use our bus services for their students. And one of the larger increases that we have since July is the percent of parents who would want their students masked. And as you can see, 26.8% in July, 44% now, close to 45%. So definitely in terms of our parents supporting our students wearing masks, which is part of our reopening plan, was a requirement and expectation. The parents who participated in this survey, there was a larger percentage that wanted that option or wanted that expectation for their students also. So in terms of critical preventive measures, there were two areas that were an increase from July, and I have it kind of bolded there: physical distancing. There was a slight uptick, about a 1% increase from July, and parents thinking that that's critical, something that we need to have in place for students to open, our schools to open in person. But then going back to what we just saw on the previous slide, face coverings, a huge increase, almost 8%, in terms of parents thinking that that is a critical need for our students to return back to school safely. It's still the top two, continuing, even though there's less people that chose that option. The disinfecting and hand washing or hand hygiene were still top of the list for the majority of our parents. So in terms of some of the items in these next few slides that we had in our original reopening plan, and ensuring that our staff and students were safe in returning to in-person instruction, these options for us, our expectations have not changed. We still consider having classrooms, safe playgrounds, cafeterias, all of these areas, school buses, where students are expected to, especially on a bus, wear a mask. And if they don't have a mask when they come to the bus stop, our bus drivers do have a stockpile of masks that they would be able to provide the student before that student got on the bus. And our discussion on that has not changed since our last meeting, that we're not going to transport students if they do not have a mask. Other things that are identified here in terms of the classroom: all students facing the same direction in the classroom, having assigned seats, and those assigned seats go for the cafeteria and the bus as well. Having the classroom be disinfected after all student transitions. And one of the things we have worked on and were able to was trying to minimize also the transitions that we have at the high school, which since traditionally students have 6 to 7 different teachers, in the last month, we've been able to, the high school has been able to put together a block schedule similar to the middle school, so there's less transitions for those students and more isolation for them in terms of any cases we would need to trace if there was a positive, or any quarantining that the school that we have the most students in, we're now able to put those students in smaller groups. Dividers for the classrooms, we will have dividers for all classrooms, and for the majority of our students right now, we have an order to have over 8,000 dividers for the district. And just keeping in mind, we have 5,000 students, or a little bit over 5,000 students in our district. So classrooms will also, whether they need them or not, will be able to provide barriers for students that sit at tables, especially our kindergarten and first grade students who generally sit at tables. We know we need to have those barriers for them.
I have a question.
Yes.
The students changing classroom, who is going to be the one sanitizing the rooms after each class? Is that going to be the teacher?
It would be the teacher, and also, for those students who can support that, similar to what we did last winter when we had the flu outbreak, and many of our teachers were cleaning down rooms in between transitions. And often they have students who help support them with those cleanings. We will have an additional Sedesco staff in our buildings. We've hired more, and we still have a few more that we need to hire so that they can help with some of those high traffic areas in the classroom. I mean, not in the classrooms, but throughout the buildings, such as the cafeteria and the restrooms, to help support in making sure that our buildings are clean.
I was really concerned about, does the teacher have enough time to clean the classroom before the next students come in?
Mm-hmm. And I think that, like I said, knowing that, certain buildings that's been a practice, But now that, especially our middle school and high school with the block scheduling, that we can create a system where there's more flexibility in students moving from one area of the building to the next, so that that's not a concern or an issue. Because at the high school and the middle school with additional class time, or I should say instructional time, there conceivably could be, a few more minutes for teachers and students to shut down and prepare for the transition to a next class before any bell rings or any transition starts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question kind of in the same area. Is when you talked about the new block schedule, so how many times will middle school kids, change classes with this new system?
So beyond just coming into the building and leaving the building, you're looking at 4 classes. So potentially, 4 times, and it can even be shorter than that, depending on how the schedule is made up. And it's probably even easier for them, say for instance, the middle school, because they're on teams. So those teams control the hours of the day that the students have. And our system, since we started middle schools probably over 20 years ago in Michigan City, has been for those teams to have flexible hours. So the teams can control within the day, since the students are with them 80% or 90% of the day, how often those students can transition or don't need to transition. So beyond just going to, their next block or next class in lunch, which can even be something that's, once again, determined by, the team and what the building determines is the best way to operate, we can limit the amount of transitions for those students so that their transitions at the middle school and high school would be no more than what we would do at the elementary buildings in terms of the times that those students are in and out of a classroom. Okay. So, and just to continue once again from our previous reopening guidance, all the things in terms of preventive measures, these are still items that we believe fit into what best practices are for in-person instruction during this time. And I will point out, that we've had people that have asked, or outside organizations with regards to, using our facilities, and we still, have held on to the guidance of, at least through the first semester or through the end of this calendar year through December, we're not, letting outside groups use our facilities. We want to just, at this point, if we're going to have students in the building, we want to, focus on having, our school activities, our students using our facilities for right now. And then also in terms of, visitors and guests and volunteers, even if we do go back to in person, limiting the amount of people who are in and out of our buildings.
Does that include athletic events?
For our students, or are you saying for other?
Well, I mean, so,
groups?
for athletic events, like, people on the other school, kids would come from another school district to come and play volleyball at our school. Is that going to happen?
Yes. Yes. In terms of athletics or outside groups is mainly what I'm speaking to. But even in that, we do have a limit in terms of guests or the number of fans from other schools that can come to our games.
Is there another set of, guidelines for those kinds of events? About,
yes, we do have in the athletic plan that we had approved through the county, and also it closely mirrors the IHSAA, and that was part of our reopening plan, points out how many fans we can have in the stands and all of those things.
And is that available somewhere? Is that on the website or something?
Yes, it's on the website, and I can share it with you.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
This is Peggy. Regarding the request for symptom information with absences, is there going to be routine screening, and if so, or if not, who then will be the one person per facility or per the school district who will be responsible for following up on these individuals who may indeed need testing?
We just received information from the DOE, and we had to send information in terms of the contacts for our buildings. So we have determined that the principal and also the school nurse, since we now have a nurse for each building, are those two people responsible for any of that information, whether it's tracing symptoms, and then also the school secretary who helps in terms of operations or assists in terms of operations with the principal is also privy to that information.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have some questions about that too, but I think we'll probably get to that a little later. Is that right? The whole contact tracing thing? I'll go through this, but I will say in terms of the contract tracing piece, I did share some new guidance also from the Indiana State Department of Health in terms of guidance, but I can answer those questions, after I just move through these next couple of slides here. Okay. So, and then once again, this is another piece of information that was part of our reopening plan that was approved in terms of, some of the precautions, physical distancing as much as possible, for sure the mask. We have separate locations for students who need to be isolated or staff that need to be isolated. Refillable water stations we now have or are installing in each one of our buildings. We've done awareness and training for our staff, and we plan to do more awareness and training for our parents. Once again, the enhanced cleaning that goes along with us hiring additional staff through Sedesco to be available to help disinfect and clean the buildings. The hand washing breaks, those are essential and are items that will be scheduled into the day for our students. And always just really emphasizing to our staff and students, if you are displaying or have any of those symptoms, to stay home. We still plan to operate with the three options for our parents, and that is in person for those who would like to have that option. But once again, we know that we have many parents who prefer to keep their students virtual right now. And if they do prefer to keep them virtual, we still plan to operate with the two options that we started off with in our original plan. And that's for Michigan City Area Schools Online, which is during the regular school day. It's synchronous and it's some asynchronous. So it's live instruction. It could be some recorded instruction, but it's during the regular school day that we normally have. And that's staffed by our teachers. And then the virtual academy, which is self-paced, it's 100% online. And this is follows along more so with a homeschool option for our parents who still prefer to keep their students at home, but they would prefer, that their students have a little bit more flexibility in terms of when they're logging on and how they're finishing their assignments. And that's still staffed by our staff members, our teachers as well, certified teachers. So right now we have 100 students that are enrolled in the virtual academy, which we did open it up for K-6 because we had a lot of parents who needed that flexibility. So we have 100 students right now that are enrolled K-5, and then we still have our number of students over 60 in grades 6 through 12 that are enrolled in the program. So we find that we're working through some of the initial kinks that we had with the software and the programming, but we're much better off now than we were 3 weeks ago, which I'm sure our teachers are happy about. But those two options are still available for our parents who choose and want to have their students be online. So I have a couple of questions about that.
Yes.
So is it 100 kids K through 5 plus 100 6 through 12 on
Yes.
the virtual?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you have any information about attendance on the MCAS online, how that's going? I mean,
I can provide you with an update. The initial updates we had in terms of attendance, they were well above 90%, which is what we shoot for and want to have a target for in terms of just overall virtual learning. That was our initial information, but I can definitely share that in our next meeting.
Well, that's great to hear. Terrific. And then parents who want to continue the MCAS online, will they still be able to utilize those kind of remote locations, the Boys and Girls Club locations for that?
In terms, yes, they will. The Boys and Girls Club would still be able to provide learning centers for those parents who need a location, a safe location for their students to go during the day. Okay. So with that information, our recommendation is to, as originally pointed out in our plan, is to resume in-person classes October 19th. And this, of course, is just based on COVID conditions, which, as I've pointed out over the last 3 weeks, have stayed below the 5% threshold for test positivity. And then using the new county metrics, we're at a 0.5 in terms of the county. And then with that recommendation, knowing that we're going to have all parents reassess whether they want to continue with the online options or return to a traditional setting. And then we also plan to continue to update the board at each monthly board meeting with the metrics, as we've been doing the past 2 board meetings. And then at our next meeting on the 29th, asked for approval of some of the revisions for the reopening plan that was approved back in July. Now that we know that there's some revisions in terms of the virtual, Michigan City Virtual Academy initially was for 7 through 12. Some of the new metrics systems that have now been provided from the state are some of the items that we would like to also bring to you for revision on the 29th. But overall, this will give us an opportunity to ensure that our classrooms are balanced by the 19th. If you approve for the reopening for that, we know that there's some imbalances right now in terms of schools where parents have decided to stick with the virtual academy or go to Michigan City Online. Also, in terms of determining where to place our staff, this will also give us time to help with that situation, and then also working with our different employee groups to ensure that we have everything that's needed for in-person instruction to begin on October 19th. So, questions?
So I was looking at that, the new guidance for it, for those who have been in contact with somebody. I guess, it kind of jumps over some issues. And so like the first issue is if somebody is feeling ill, there's no requirement that they get tested, right?
There is no requirement in terms of our reopening plan. We did provide that if, as it stands right now, that if someone is experiencing or exhibiting any symptoms, that they are to quarantine, and we treat those folks as a positive case. I mean, that right now, as our plan is written, that's how we have been operating.
But you're treating it as a positive, but like the health department sent all that stuff about reporting, but you
Yes.
wouldn't report that as a positive because if they're not tested.
They haven't tested positive, correct?
So, and there's no requirement that they get tested.
There's no requirement, but in terms of the way we've operated, for anyone that has, exhibited any symptoms, we've asked for them to, have a release provided by their healthcare provider, which has provided us with the test results.
Oh, okay. So
we asked for our staff, we have asked for them, anybody that has had to be sent home or stay home, we have required them to provide us with some type of release from their healthcare provider.
And that equals a negative test result.
Yes.
Okay, but that's just staff. That's not students?
No, yes, correct. We have not, at this point, really, we haven't, I'm trying to think how many students we've had in that situation. I mean, we've had students that have had to quarantine, but we have not asked them to provide us at this point. We haven't had anyone that you have to provide us with a negative sample before you return.
Okay. So, because I know we've had a couple of positives among athletes. And so they just, for whatever reason, they got tested. There was no requirement for them to be tested. Maybe they
In
just
our
felt ill.
athletic, I mean, in our athletic plan for, and I'll need to go back, but I do know for the couple of students that we did have that tested positive, they did bring us a release from their healthcare provider after the requisite number of days that they were supposed to isolate.
Okay. And we're still going to go, like, as far as athletics, we're still going with the same plan. So if anybody in contact with an athlete, coaches or players, it tests positive, then we stop all activities for 2 weeks. Wasn't that the plan?
The plan is that we trace who their close contacts are. And so in some cases, we've been able to trace to determine it's just a small cohort. So we don't need to stop the entire program. But in a couple of cases, specifically with our volleyball and football programs, all of those players were considered a close contact just in terms of, because of the level of engagement with the coach. So we did stop those programs. But ideally, just like if we go back to in-person, we're able to, identify and trace where those folks are. And then from there, determine the level of spread and determine the actions we need to take in terms of, whether it's just a classroom, it's a handful of students, it's just a teacher, or is it more involved than that? But all based on, the positive test result that we would be informed about.
Okay. So, and I'm a little concerned about, how many kids. I mean, what if a very high number of families, have said, they've had it with this at home thing. They're sending their kids to school. And then we have so many that, we're not able to, space them properly. Then what do we do?
If we get a positive test or?
No, I just mean if we set, I know parents are just, they are very anxious to, have their kids in school, and I get that. But what if we, because we're kind of counting on, I think, some parents, keeping kids at home and having then extra space in the buildings. But what if we don't, what if we have more parents than we expect who want to send their kids back into the building, and then we don't have enough space to keep kids separated adequately?
In terms of, that question, it's difficult for me to really give you an adequate response until I'm able to see what exactly the numbers look like. And then from there, I know that because we have barriers, which most school districts that have returned to in-person don't have, on top of, some of the other requirements that we've put into place, that we would physically distance as best we can. But in terms of having a certain number of students in a classroom, having an opportunity to work over these next several weeks to try to balance out those classrooms with the teachers and the principals, will give us the best response in terms of, okay, we can have 15 kids or 15 students in each one of these classes. We can physically distance 3 to 6 feet without any issues. Those are answers that, until we get the new enrollment information, I can't give that to you right now.
So then, assuming the board approves this plan, then then registration will open up like right away?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be the plan.
And then we wouldn't really, people could register up until October 19th, right? Or there's not a close date, probably.
We don't have a close date right now, and we want to just make sure that we have as much information as we can as soon as we can get it. And I know our parents were pretty good. The majority of our parents were pretty good about getting that information to us as soon as we needed it back in July.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, yeah, I know that's like you can't really figure it out until you're in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but ideally,
right.
we want to try to maximize the spacing as well for our students. And we know we'll do that in terms of the transitionings with our schools working on entry into the building, dismissal from the building, lunchtime, breakfast time, all those things are plans that, buildings were working on before we made the final decision to go out. So now it's just a matter of, okay, now that we know what we're going to do there, so how do we operate with students once we get them into the classroom? So we do have, information on how things are going, with the students that are at the high school, how they're going at the Career Center. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to jinx anything, but I mean, those buildings have been operating and moving along for the past month with students in the classrooms.
So the
This is
guidance on
Peggy.
athletic events, I'm just concerned about, I mean, that seems like those could, just really be unpredictable, spreader events. Just because of the way athletics, events happen and people, behave at them. And I know that people are very eager to have athletic events, but so is there guidance that's really enforceable as far as, people coming to watch events and sitting in the bleachers and being separated and wearing masks?
Yes, there's different sections. I mean, and I think for the most part, the activity or the sport we're going to have the most people would be generally our football games. So once again, the attendance at those games is limited to 500 people. So if you can just imagine, we generally have over 3,000 people in the stands for those games. So I mean, there's just off the top, there's going to be fewer students and fewer people in general to help us keep people physically distant from one another. But, in terms of the people that are not, physically distant in the areas that they're sitting in, the mask wearing is something that as a school district, we enforce. So if there are students or anyone that's in the stands that aren't adhering to our expectations, I mean, we have the right to, say you need to wear those or, forfeit your right to be in the game.
Okay. Yeah, basketball seems like that's going to be a tricky one. So I'm sorry, I won't, monopolize you. I know everyone has questions.
Yes, this is Peggy, and Ms. Chubb asked a lot of good questions. And one of the things that I'm thinking of, and this does look like a very good plan, and it would really be beneficial if we could do entrance testing before we would open, but I know that that's not a possibility given the status of where we are right now with our testing. But I think it is equally important to have built into this plan some sort of surge testing plan if indeed we were to begin to notify that be notified of there being an increase in the numbers of cases, and have something written in that we would know how to respond. And that is also something that you could share with parents and guardians, that this is what indeed you will do in the event of.
And in terms of a surge spread, do you have a certain metric or number that you would think would be something that we would be alerted to?
Originally the DOE was saying that it's just one per person in each classroom, but they did change that.
Okay.
So that if my child is in second grade and they find another student in that same classroom who tests positive because of exposure somewhere else, not from school, then you'll work with, the county health department and your team to do the contact tracing. But parents would have to be notified. Children would, the entire classroom would be excluded from attending school in person.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just needs to be very detailed and very specific, so that, and Ms. Chubb just said that we'll see as we go along. I just believe that it should be something that is built in right now from the get-go and not wait for it to happen.
Understand.
I have a question. Has there been any indication of how the data is going to be collected as we enter flu season and the regular flu as opposed to pandemic? How are those numbers going to be reported and divided out? So we enter the metric with all of it instead of just the COVID part. Anybody talked that through yet?
Well, I think that would require like mandatory COVID testing, to
Yes.
separate those.
Well, we're heading that way in a couple of weeks. And if the metrics are based on numbers, shouldn't we know where the numbers are coming from to follow that metric? Somebody should be thinking about that, I think.
Mhm. I will say, just going back to the situation that we encountered in January, that, our nurses were, on the front line with that, school nurses, in terms of being able to determine, because parents were taking their students to the doctor's office to get diagnosed with having the flu. So, we were very much relying on the parents and our nurses, chasing after information to determine, who had the flu and, what percentage of our students and teachers were not in the building. I mean, so that's all information that I know our nurses, they look at that data on a daily basis and they report it to the principals. The principals report it to me. But in terms of determining whether or not it's the actual flu or the COVID, or it's a COVID infection, you're right, that does require, those students needing to have a test. So we can definitely get more guidance on that from our county health department.
Is the health department doing anything about, doing flu shots? Like maybe, coming to the school and doing flu shots or anything?
I have not received any information from the county in terms of doing that.
That would be helpful. And do we require staff to get a flu shot, or
No.
just, I mean, or at
we
least
don't
like
we
provide
haven't-
them for free or anything?
Not to my knowledge.
Should probably think about that. I mean, it seems like historically that's happened where, like the teachers have been provided flu shots like at the school, and I don't know.
It did happen. It did happen at Eastport when the preschool was there, because my office was there. So it did happen. They came in and gave the shots to the people that wanted it. So there is some kind of, record of it that they did do that. Maybe they don't give us that option anymore.
I agree, though. That's a great idea.
Any other questions?
And I wonder if, are we doing anything to help with training parents on masks? I mean, perhaps a, catchy video or something that we can put on the website and social media?
We can definitely do that, and there are so many different options out there for us just to update and add to our website. Even if it's just us as staff, us as district leaders, board members, doing a video on that as well. I think that would go a long way in supporting our efforts of saying masks are needed.
Right, and then is it also like somewhere in like the athletic, I don't know, on the ticket, or when you go to buy a ticket, or on the flyer for the event, saying masks, will be required?
It's not on the ticket, but we can plaster it on the outside of the event, on the doors before people ever walk in, that they know that they can't come in without a mask. And even if they do come in wearing the mask, they need to keep it on. I mean, so that guidance can also be, reiterated through our PA systems, throughout the event.
And will we have a supply of masks? You know,
Yes. Yes, in terms of we have an abundance of PPE that's already been deployed to the buildings and sent to our transportation department, in terms of, disinfecting, spray, wipes, any of those cleaners, those have been deployed to the buildings as well. And we have an abundance of those items. And as I mentioned earlier, the water stations and the barriers will also be in place.
excellent. Wow.
And I will say, in terms of, us delaying our in-person start, has given us an opportunity to speak to all the other districts that, started in person, going back to Avon and other schools down in Indianapolis back at the beginning or at the end of July. So we've been able to, discuss with them some of the positives and negatives that they've had so far with the different options they're providing.
Excellent. And then, when will it be, like the week before October 19th, where we will look at the data again and make a final determination, assuming there's no additional surge?
We could have another special meeting just on reviewing the metrics before that Monday, if it's the Monday before or Tuesday before.
I mean, I suppose it wouldn't be necessary unless there was some change, which is fine. But I just assume, so you'll be looking, a week ahead and
Yes.
make the determination.
Correct.
We do have a board meeting still in September 29th, so that gives us, that'd be like 2 weeks out for the start date, maybe, or a little bit more.
At least 2 weeks, yes.
2 weeks, okay. Any other questions? Dr. McComb, I have one question about food services. So if kids elect or parents elect to send their kids back traditional, then they will not be allotted the food supply, correct?
Correct.
And then the kids who will still do virtual or remote will still, okay. Want to make sure of that.
Yes.
And when on that same topic on food service, you mentioned that there would be no self-serve anymore. So how does that work? If the kids go to to lunch and don't have self-serve, like how do they get served?
The meals are prepackaged, so you can just envision food that's already wrapped or already on a plate for you. There's not an option for them to do any serving on their own. It's already something that's been prepared by food services.
I see. And they'll still be in a line though, I guess, next to each other. Oh, they have to wear a mask though, right? Until they
Yes.
sit down, they have to have a mask on.
Yes.
And then
And we've increased the number of lunch periods that we do have to minimize the number of students that are in those spaces.
Okay. And we're doing more than one kid on a bus seat, I guess, huh? But they're wearing masks.
Correct. They're wearing masks. And we'll see, in terms of the survey where, a large percentage of our parents are saying that they're not going to use transportation, what those numbers look like. But in terms of even right now, for our athletic teams that have been traveling and some of the students that are going to the Career Center in the high school, we've had no issues, overwhelming issues with students wearing masks.
Right.
One question, are we still doing the e-learning days? Like our next one coming up is September 21st.
Yes,
Are we still doing those dates?
Yes, we still have one for September 21st for teacher preparation for the potential of return of in-person instruction. And then we also have one we know on November 3rd. That'll be an e-learning day for the district.
And what about the ones in October? Oh, well, we have the fall break 2 days.
Yeah, we have fall break. So we're not recommending any changes to those dates at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Anything else, Dr. McCollum?
No, that's all I have.
So at this time, was the board's pleasure reference the recommendation of traditional appearance in school starting October 19th as an option?
Well, Kim, are we going to vote on it today, or are we going to do it at our next school board meeting on September 29th?
We need
I
to vote.
believe-
We need to vote on it for option today as one of the options,
Yeah, just to allow everyone to prepare.
so they can prepare.
Okay, then I so move to set forth with it.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Any other discussion?
Mommy.
Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
But wait, what did they say?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There is unanimous.
Gonna try to stay positive, stay positive.
Yes,
Not exactly like jumping off a cliff, but you know,
not even close.
okay, good, all right, good. Yeah, feel better.
Dr. Watkins, you have anything?
I'm sorry?
I asked Dr. Watkins, does she have
Oh,
anything?
I'm sorry.
Not really. I just want to thank Dr. McCollum and members of the cabinet who've been meeting on a regular basis, trying to ensure that all decisions were, based on the data and based on the health and safety protocols that have been in place. And it's been a journey. Our teachers have been working exceptionally hard to ensure that our online program was of the quality that everyone desired. So again, just a special thanks to the board for entrusting, in us. And we have tried to ensure that we have stayed on top of every protocol, every change in information that was necessary to bring us to tonight's decision.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? I see other cabinet members available. Did anybody else have any other questions or comments?
Well, Dr. McCollum, get your work cut out for you, and hang in there. We're with you. We're with you.
Thank you.
So I do have like a final comment if we're at that point.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if any other cabinet members had anything.
No, thank you, Mr. Corley.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Oh, I didn't really ask about Stacy about how the special ed is going. Is this have they been already in the building?
So no, not all students, but we do have some receiving services, related services in the building, yes, but not
And-
full time.
So theoretically, October 19th, you would go back to all the special needs children being in the building.
Yes. Mhm.
And none of that will will switch to home-based or anything?
They can continue with the same choices. So if they have a traditional setting or online or virtual academy, they can still receive their services in all three settings. So it depends on the family and the needs.
Yeah. Do you have any idea about how many students will choose in person as opposed to at home?
The ratio is very similar to what about 30% that want to stay virtual. The rest are ready to come back. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Any other comments?
I'm sorry, Marty, what'd you say?
I said, or any other comments for anybody?
I have a comment. October 5th is the last day to register to vote.
Yeah.
Please, please, please go to indianavoters.com and check your voter registration and register to vote and find out where your early voting site is. And find out who's on your ballot or request an absentee ballot. You can do all of those things at indianavoters.com.
Thank you. Any other board members had anything before we finished?
No.
Dr. McCollum, do you have anything else?
You know what, I just, once again, just like to thank the board for keeping equity at the top of mind in any decisions we make. You know, we know as a district that, you know, we're striving for, you know, equity and education opportunities, you know, for all of our students. And, you know, we want to champion, you know, our ultimate goal of, you know, eliminating, you know, the racial predictability of our groups. And, you know, having an opportunity for our students to take advantage and our parents to take advantage of any of the options that the board has provided to us will go a long way in helping to do that.
Excellent.
All right, thank you. So thank everybody. At this time, we will adjourn the meeting and have a good evening.
Everybody take care.